Has Royal Caribbean gone too far with its casino expansion plans? I've really started thinking about this after last week's news about the fact that Radiance of the Seas, a Radiance class ship, had its pub removed in order to be replaced with a non-smoking casino. And this is part of a bigger trend. Now, over the years, I've actually been mostly in favor of the casino expansions. I'm not a major gambler, just got enough to get to Prime, and then Prime being in the casino loyalty program. And then I mostly just take advantage of the benefits that you get there. I mostly do it for two reasons. One is for the free drinks in the casino bar, and the other is for hopefully a free offer from the casino in the mail or online or both. You do get, when you get to Prime, you usually get a free cruise on top of that for being a Prime member, but basically that's been my mantra. And when you go on many ships, you've traditionally had to go into the casino, which is like one side non-smoking, one side smoking. I think we learned from airplanes in the 70s that doesn't really work. The smoke goes on both sides and it's not enjoyable. I never let it stop me, but there have been many times, in fact, where I've said, I'm not enjoying this, or I'm going to come, maybe to stop me, pause. I'll come back later on when it's not quite so smoky. Anyway, Royal Caribbean started expanding its casino, and I'm going to tell you why I like the benefits and then why this might have gone too far. So by far, I think if you can control your gambling to a point where you're not spending a ton of money, it requires a lot of self-control, because it's easy to say, I'm going in there to get Prime and that's it. And you end up, losing thousands of dollars. I think I've gotten better about this. I certainly have gone into the casino always with the idea that it's entertainment, something to do on board the ship. In the same way I might go to the pub, or I might go see a show, or I might go to the pool. It's something to do. And we usually come in with whatever money I got in my pocket. Occasionally I'll charge money to the onboard account because I'm feeling like I'm due, but my wife usually yells at me because it backfires. And anyway, but for the fact that let's assume that you get to Prime. I mean, you're basically going to get a free cruise off the bat for getting to Prime. You're going to get free drinks at the casino for a year, if not more, and the prospect of getting these free casino offers. And that's not bad. And the fact that you can now, with some of these expansions and some of these new non-smoking areas, enjoy being in the casino more than you have in the past, I'm kind of in favor of it. The thing is that the expansions have gone from that makes total sense to head scratching. Initially, they replaced the Jazz on 4 club on the Oasis class ships. Deck 4, the Jazz Club was a nice feature. I like the Jazz on 4 thing, but I'd admit that it was never the most popular place there. And Royal Caribbean initially actually made this change for Wonder of the Seas back when Wonder of the Seas was supposed to be in Asia. Remember, initially that was her scheduled debut. But then COVID happened and Wonder was brought to North America instead. But the plans already had for the casino in there. And so Royal Caribbean says they kind of thought, well, what if we kept it there? What would happen? Let's see. We'll make it a non-smoking casino and see what happens. Well, I guess what happened was it did pretty darn well. And so all the Jazz on 4s got replaced with non-smoking casinos. And then Royal Caribbean went one step further on a couple of its ships, and they actually took out the Comedy Club and they took out the Crown Lounge. They moved the Crown Lounge up to another deck, taking up some of the arcade space or the space for the teenagers, which, by the way, makes total sense to me because the teenagers are rarely ever in their club. So anyway, did that and made a larger casino footprint, all of it non-smoking, all of it offering a bar, in fact. And if you've been on Wonder of the Seas or Utopia of the Seas and you've been in that non-smoking casino, it's quite enjoyable. It's quite pleasurable, actually. I think it reminds me more of a land casino in terms of it being like more of a resort feel. The thing is, they've gone beyond that. Freedom of the Seas was the first foray into this. With Freedom, they replaced Vintage's wine bar on the Royal Promenade. We've never had a casino on the Royal Promenade before. And once again, I justified it by saying nobody ever went to that bar. With apologies to the wine drinkers who are listening, it's a lovely bar for that. But I would bet, and I'm sure I made jokes and comments all over the years, that Vintage's is routinely an empty place. I used to actually do a lot of work when I needed to do Royal Caribbean blog updates from there because it had the most comfiest couches. No one was ever in there. In the evening, we get a little busy, but in the daytime, it was dead. Anyway, they gutted it, put a non-smoking casino in here with a bar. And I thought it was actually not a bad idea. Okay. But definitely out of the context. Now we have on Radiance of the Seas, them going one step further. And they're taking out the pub and replacing it with the non-smoking casino. On the plus side, the pub was already attached to the casino by two different corridors. It ended up being fairly smoky to begin with, but still, I think, number one, it's a great venue. Number two, I thought it's the best layout in terms of any pub on Royal Caribbean ships. And most importantly, number three, it's where you get one of the core forms of evening entertainment on board. The pub singer is, to me, a staple of a Royal Caribbean cruise ship in the same way that the schooner bar player is. I mean, it's hard to imagine a ship without it. And not only that, you've got, of course, the fact that it was revenue generating. It's a bar. Bars are good. Bars make money. Bars are, people are buying drinks and whatnot. Now, arguably, you could point out, probably not as much money as the casino. And that's, I think, where this whole debate rests. And ever since they announced that, and Radiance of the Seas is back in service, by the way, they didn't even announce it. It just happened. And now it's there. It really scratches my head. It also reminds me of the fact that Liberty of the Seas is going in for an amplification later this year, and she's not getting a Playmakers added like Independence and Freedom both had in its area where the photo gallery used to be, or is on Liberty, as it were. Instead, they're just expanding that into a non-smoking casino area. And I'd point out that on Freedom and Independence, while there's Playmakers in that spot, which, by the way, is a specialty restaurant, which, by the way, makes money, there are still slot machines inside the Playmakers connection area between the casino and Playmakers. So it's not like it doesn't make any money. But what's clear to me is Royal Caribbean is saying we want to make the most amount of money with the space possible. And their actions, to me, they haven't said anything. They haven't commented on it. But to me, their actions speak volumes that we are looking to maximize revenue, and the casino will make more money than a bar, and it'll make more money than especially a restaurant. And it's kind of interesting because it's not so much that these places don't make money. It's that we want to make more money here. And this is really where today's topic kind of came from. I was actually watching this video, to be perfectly fair. I was watching The Weekend Cruiser, and a good friend of mine, we've cruised a couple times together, and I was actually watching his video about this. He was coming at it from a different perspective, I believe. But nonetheless, I think he brought up some really good points, and I was actually thinking about the same thing because I love the pub, and I think it's actually a mistake on Radiance of the Seas. I thought it was a mistake to get rid of the comedy clubs because they moved the comedy into the Royal Theater. That doesn't really work on the same level. The problem with removing the pub is on a ship like Radiance, which is significantly smaller than, Oasis class ships or Quantum class ships. That greatly reduces the choice and activities and things to do in the evening from an entertainment standpoint. I mean, it's one thing if you have many other choices, removing one doesn't have as much of an aggregate effect. Here, I think on Radiance it does. And let's face it, if we learned anything from the changes to the Jazz-on 4 and the Oasis class ships, I have no doubt in my mind that they will make the same exact changes to remove the pub on the other Radiance class ships. Granted, that's an assumption. Nothing's been confirmed. But based on prior history and their pattern of work, I fully expect that to be the case. And I think it's a mistake. I get that they want to be profitable. They're a for-profit company. They should be, wanting to do that. I would also argue that they're the most profitable cruise line in the world right now. Carnival and Norwegian can't hold a candle to what they're doing. I mean, we talked about Norwegian last week and some of the issues they have. But, I mean, Royal Caribbean is not only head and shoulders above other cruise lines. They are, what's bigger than Head and Shoulders? 3 heads and shoulders above. I mean, it's just, they're doing so much better. So they're doing really well. Every piece of financial data points that they're moving in the right direction. And this is when you start to look at the changes and raise your eyebrows, because that's what I did when I saw about this. In terms of changes, any change, not to casino, any change Royal Caribbean does, when they make a change, my first thought is, does this impact the guest experience, the core guest experience? There have been plenty of changes since I've covered Royal Caribbean. They've, as an example, after COVID, they got rid of the flowers. You used to actually be able to get flowers delivered to your cabin. They got rid of the ability to rent a tuxedo on board the ship. This is 2 changes that were done after COVID. Both of those changes do not affect the core guest experience. Both of those changes are they're cutbacks, but who cares? I mean, yes, there were some people who might have used them, but in the grand scheme of things, it was not a core guest experience cutback. When you remove the pub, this is one of those where I start to think, is that really infringing on it? I like the benefits of the casino, but not that much where, we don't want the ships to get to the point where the casino footprint becomes like, oh, it's another feature on the ship to like, it is the feature. Now, don't forget Legend of the Seas, which is coming out this summer, is going to have a 2-story casino, first time ever. And that's going to take up some extra space that wasn't previously being utilized for casino space on the other Icon class ships. There's definitely Royal Caribbean's pushing the envelope. And to their credit, in some cases, they like to, they don't want to make carbon copies of everything. They don't want to always be like, well, this is how they've done it. We're going to do it that way going forward. And I respect the idea they don't have, there's no golden calves that they kind of adhere to and that sort of thing. Thinking outside the box, that's good stuff to do. But at the same time, I think the push into casino gambling is starting to be more noticeable than simply, oh, well, that makes sense. And this is now impacting other guest experiences on board, the pub being one of them. And I don't know what to think of it, quite frankly. I can see both. I like both sides of it. On the one hand, I'm a non-smoker. I like to gamble. I like that there's a space for me in there. And there's a bar there too, which makes it easier to get drinks. You have to wait that long for a cocktail. Because I'm Prime, I get free drinks. There's another place to get drinks. This is all good stuff, right? It makes it easier to enjoy the thing that gets me there. On the flip side, not having a pub entertainer is a major issue, and I have not seen yet. I could be wrong, so let me throw this out there. For all I know, they've moved the pub entertainer somewhere else on the ship. I'm not aware that they have, but they may do that. Maybe the feedback, when they closed Jazz on 4 in the Oasis class ships, they moved the performers, the jazz performers to Central Park, which actually isn't a bad idea, unless it's the summer and you're in the Caribbean and it's 1,000 degrees outside. But on the surface, weather permitting, it's actually not a bad idea. With the pub, I don't know where you'd put them. I mean, you can't put them near the Schooner Bar because, the Colony Club is an example, but I feel like it's too close, but I don't know. I mean, they could re-add them back. I don't know how and what capacity and what venue would do that. But I think this is starting to get into the realm of like, is it too much? Is it too much of a good thing, so to speak? And that's kind of where I'm coming at it from today's episode. And, part of it is just being realistic with all of you that not everything Royal Caribbean does I love. And this is an example of it. I fully expect them to make the same change on the other Radiance class ships whenever they have their every 5-year maintenance schedule. And just like Radiance, they probably want to announce it ahead of time. It'll just magically happen. But, the only way it doesn't happen is if for some reason the casino underperforms financially, or, there would have to be such an upswell of negative guest feedback. When I say an upswell, it would have to be like significant. I don't see that happening. I don't think enough people are aware of it. And it's Radiance of the Seas, not exactly Icon. I don't see it happening personally, but I guess it could happen. Anyway, you never know. And I'm the first to admit I'm a terrible prognosticator. I never know what the future holds. But it is an interesting change, and I can't say it sits perfectly with me, but I'm definitely, while I am in favor of non-smoking casino space, and like many of you have probably commented already, why not make the casinos non-smoking to begin with? Because the amount of people and the percentages of people that smoke are considerably down. That's a bigger discussion altogether that I've already gone on enough about casinos on this episode, but that's a fair point as well to make. I wouldn't discredit it. That being said, it's an where Royal Caribbean's moving into some interesting territory here with some of these changes to the casino, and it has me thinking, is it too much of a good thing? All right, friends, it's time once again to answer listener emails. This is part of the episode where I answer emails that you've sent me. You can always email me your questions by emailing to Matt, M-A-T-T, at RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. First email is from Trisha. Hi, Matt. I'm taking my daughter on our first Royal Caribbean cruise in June. I was looking at the internet package and noticed that the key is only a few dollars more per person per day. I noticed the key says one device. Is that one device per person since you're paying for the key per person, or is it one device per room? Trisha, thanks for the email. And it is per person. Yeah, so the key does include one internet package per person. So in your scenario, both you and your daughter would each have a one internet device package by purchasing the key. Our next question is from Irvin from Fort Pierce, Florida. Greatly appreciate your content. A question for you. Looking to do my first cruise, probably solo, soon. I was looking at itineraries for 3 to 4 day cruises out of South Florida and was very surprised to see some sailings with only one port of call, usually just Nassau for 1 day. 2 days were sea days, sometimes back to back. With limited insights to see, is there an itinerary that could be good for a first-time cruiser? I can see the experience as being good for seeing how one handles out being in the ocean and being able to explore all the ship has to offer. However, it might not be a good representation of what cruising as a whole has to offer. Thank you for your time. Keep up the good work. Urban, you are, as a new cruiser, very astute. You're not missing anything. New 3 and 4 night cruises primarily only do those Bahamas runs. The exception to that would be if you cruised out of Tampa. There are 4-nighters that go to Cozumel, and that's it. But you're basically correct. It's a combination of, I think, a couple things. One, logistics. I mean, if you're in South Florida and you have just 3 nights to work with, there's only so much distance you can cover. Bahamas is very close. That's, logistically a much easier option than going almost anywhere else. Number 2 is the fact that, well, especially today in 2026, you've got some pretty heavy hitters in the Bahamas now, because you've got Perfect Day Coco Key, which I'm not sure how much research you've done, Irvin. Sounds like you've done a fair amount, because your email is definitely more informed than even some seasoned cruisers. But, that's a real home run with guests and passengers. So, and it's, operated by Royal Caribbean, so it makes them money. Anyway, that's a good thing there. And then they have the new beach club in Nassau. So that also contributes to it. But you're not wrong that basically a lot of these short cruises, especially the 3-night cruises, are really supposed to be weekend escapes. It's more about just getting away from it, not necessarily where you're going. If you truly want to experience what a ship has to offer, or at least be able to go to more exotic locales than the Bahamas, then yes, you need to go on a longer sailing. This is why, actually, when people ask me, what is a good first cruise, I don't recommend a 3 and a 4-nighter. I always recommend a 7-nighter. I think a 3 and a 4-nighter is great to augment your cruising. Like, you book a bunch of cruises that you're going to do. These are like these are awesome cruises to book. And then the 3 and 4-nighters are for the, I've got a long weekend coming. I think I can squeeze a cruise in. That kind of a thing. Not that anybody listens to me on that, because the numbers say otherwise. But if you're asking my opinion, that's what I'd recommend. Our next email is from Valerie. I just recently joined Royal Caribbean Blog. We have been on several cruises and love Royal Caribbean. I have a question about pricing mistakes. I called Royal Caribbean and asked them to price me a couple of suites with different numbers of people. It ended up being that none of the other people could go. When I went to see what the prices were for just 2 people, I found a really great price. I immediately booked it. The more I checked, the more I realized it has to be a mistake. So I called them up and asked to pay my gratuity, thinking this would lead to someone investigating and realizing there was a pricing issue. Nope, nothing. They just said I had a really great price and let me pay my gratuity. The real problem is now I'm afraid to book my flights and other things for fear they're going to call me and tell me they're canceling me at the last minute. I know cruise contracts can be canceled almost at any time. So my question is, do you know or have any experience with what Royal Caribbean's normal policy is, or at the time frame, would they normally catch that mistake? Boy, Valerie, this is an interesting question. Now, you didn't provide any details here, and so for the purpose of this podcast, we don't know, you might think it's a great deal, and other people might think that's not a great deal. I don't know. It's hard to quantify that. Generally speaking, they catch them pretty quickly. I guess I understand where you're coming from, and I would be leery of it too if you thought you got too good of a price, but the only time I've ever seen a true price mistake is when the pricing is so ridiculously low. There was, for cruise fares, there was one for, was it Navigator or Quantum a couple of years ago out of California, this is when the itineraries first came out, Valerie. So brand new sailings you could book, and there was one sailing that was priced ridiculously low. A bunch of people saw it, booked it, and then Royal was like, no, that's not happening. Now, that seemed to have occurred pretty quickly, I thought, when they fixed it, but you're right. There is always that risk involved with it. I would say it's a pretty low risk. If I'm trying to put myself in your shoes, Valerie, and what would I do? And, you kind of, yeah, I mean, I don't have numbers here, so I can't really tell you, is this a steal of a deal? Is it just a good price? Because sometimes you really can get really good prices. It can be for a lot of reasons. And this is kind of something that goes back to how Royal Caribbean prices their cruises these days, because it's not really people that price them anymore. I mean, there are people, don't get me wrong, but it's a lot of algorithm. And the algorithm, on a very basic scale, how Royal Caribbean uses AI is they look at a particular sailing, and the AI, they want to have a nice bell curve up, right? They want to be able, or down, however you want to look at it. They want to have a curve where the rate of bookings is consistent, and as you get towards the sail date, prices go up. The thing is, if too many people are booking a room, again, this is a gross generalization, so forgive me on this, but if too many people are booking inside rooms, because a bunch of people are we're going for the cheapest room possible, and they have way too many, relatively speaking, suites or balconies left over, they will start decreasing the price of those rooms in order to spur bookings there and level things back out. And perhaps that's what you experienced there. You also didn't say when your cruise was, because this, also one other X factor could be if you booked a last minute deal. It's usually unlikely because suites are almost always sold out. But you never know, especially if you get past final payment date and they're scrambling. That could be the situation as well. So unfortunately with your email, I don't have enough information here to tell you, but I mean, there isn't a normal policy. I mean, yes, you're right. Royal Caribbean can cancel your cruise at any time for any reason. It seems unlikely that if you got past, certainly paying your gratuity and a fair amount of time has transpired, you're probably okay. This is also too late now, but for the future, one of these good situations to work with a good travel agent, because your travel agent not only can maybe offer you advice, but more importantly, this is really where it would come in. Let's say they actually did cancel your cruise. They oopsies, there's a price mistake. I mean, I can't promise you anything, but I would imagine a good travel agent would be like a lawyer in this situation, going to seek compensation, because they're like, listen, we get your policy is, but you kind of messed with my client here. I think you need to make things right, blah, blah, blah. And then, you end up with, I don't know what, but, that, in the future, that might be also a good, firewall, if you will, for figuring that out. So hope you're able to go on your cruise. I mean, I would imagine it's more likely that you will than you won't. But travel insurance would also be important. That would cover you for your flights, because trip interruption, trip cancellation coverage, that would be covered if your cruise was canceled by the cruise line. And our last email today is from Steve. I just booked a cruise on Celebrity Summit. I'm a Diamond member with Royal Caribbean. Will there be free drinks on the SeaPass card, or just a 2-hour window of watered down drinks? Unfortunately, Steve, it is option 2. You'll have the happy hour, and I'm using air quotes there for that. It is a little bit confusing because there is status matching between Royal Caribbean and Celebrity, and also Silver Sea. And there is now the points choice thing, but your benefits aren't what's matched, just your status. So basically you'll go from Diamond to not Epic, to Elite, and or Elite Plus, whichever one it is, and you get to enjoy the Elite benefits, not your Diamond benefits. So thank you, Steve, for the email. Thank you to everybody for checking out this episode of the Royal Caribbean Blog Podcast. Of course, if I can answer your questions, always email me, Matt@RoyalCaribbeanBlog.com. Until next time, I'm Matt from Royal Caribbean Blog. We'll talk again real soon.